66 miles an hour, easy, and we haven't even turned up the power all the way.
Today we're going to be working on my Razor SX500. I haven't ridden this bike in a while because the brakes are pretty sketchy on it. 66 miles an hour on some Zoom brakes is definitely not advisable. I just want to see how fast we can go with the bike at the time, but we're definitely going to be upgrading that today. I also think that I stretched out the gearing a little bit too tall to hit those kind of speeds, so the bike doesn't feel as peppy as I want it to be in lower speeds. So we're going to be experimenting with some different gearing today. I'm also going to be turning up the power from 14 kilowatts, which I think is already a lot for any Razor, but we're going to be turning it up a little bit more after we install the motor upgrade. Let's go see what we got from Electro & Co. Alright, this is looking like the one upgrade for our EC4P motor. Here's a closer look at everything that we received. This is the TruMoto Noisy Cricket controller. I've been waiting to get one of these for a while now. It's a lot more compact in person versus the photos, which I'm very happy about because that means I can probably get one of these and fit it into multiple different applications. This is the one upgrade for the EC4P motor. The aluminum sprocket, which is super light, 35 chain. And then this is a 10-tooth 35 sprocket for the front, which is specifically designed for the one motor. Twist throttle with a 3-speed switch, grips, voltmeter, harness, on-off switch. As you can see, the controller kit came complete and it's supposed to be directly plug and play. Everything's pre-wired, so we'll see how easy it is to install. And then this is the extreme brake kit, which comes with two 160mm rotors that are designed in-house. You can see that it's got the ENC stamping on there. Comes with two sets of brake levers. Got the longer ones already pre-installed and shorter ones over here. But I think I'm gonna keep these ones on and see how I like it. So you can see it comes with much larger brake calipers in comparison to the Zoom brakes, dual piston front and rear. This should definitely be quite an upgrade from the standard Zoom brakes that we had on this. If you are interested in getting more information on all these parts, I'll have everything linked in the description below. You can also get yourself an extra discount by using code PATOutdoors5. And here's how I have the front brakes installed. I used a combination of the spacers that they provided between the caliper and the bracket, along with the bracket and the fork. Keep in mind, this is a Mototech fork, so if you have a different one installed on your Razor, the install might be slightly different, but as you can see, there's just the right amount of clearance between the rotor and the caliper on the bottom and the top side as well. You can hear just very, very minimal drag, which will go away immediately as soon as we start riding it and start bedding in the new brake pads. Here's a closer look at the differences between the old 160mm rotor that we have on there and the new one by ENC. As you can see, the Electro one has slightly larger surface area. Now the rear brake was a lot simpler to install. The rear brake pads just lined right up with the rotor as soon as I bolted the caliper on, and we didn't have to use any spacers in between the caliper and the bracket.
though I did have to use the same combination of spacers between the caliper bracket and the mount on the extended swing arm. And there's also plenty of clearance in between the caliper opening and the outer edge of the rotor. I just ran the line down the swing arm and up through the frame, going through the fork. Now let's go take this rear wheel off and put the new rotor on, along with the new rear sprocket. I only snug them down with the 3/8 impact. I always like to torque everything down by hand, especially with small bolts like this. You don't want to strip anything out. As you can see here, I have a bunch of tack welds on the front side and on the back side of the freewheel. That's because this is a pre-welded freewheel, but the threads actually failed on me on the RSF wheel the first time we took this out with the new EC4P motor. Not really sure what kind of speeds we're gonna get with this new sprocket setup. I do want it to just feel a lot more peppier throughout the whole power band. But this does feel significantly lighter than all the other sprockets I've had in the past. While we got things apart back here, let's go take out the EC4P motor and install the one upgrade. So I'm gonna disconnect this from the FarDriver. Actually, let's just go take out the FarDriver controller as well. This is actually going to be a first time for me. Can't imagine it'd be too different from the MY1020 besides the rotor size along with a couple other things. Take the sprocket off. It is reverse thread, so we're going to turn the lock nut clockwise to loosen it. Now we're going to take off the 4 long bolts with a Phillips screwdriver. I'm just going to set this aside. We're actually no longer going to be using this cap or the bearings, since the one upgrade comes with its own set. We're also no longer going to be using the original style sprocket, lock nut, or the bolts. Sure there's no debris on the new rotor. I'm going to start by putting the bearings on. Okay, looks like all the holes line up with the cap. Now we're going to put the other cap on, but before we do that, we're going to install the shaft seal on the new cap. I'm going to use a 17 mil socket to fully seat it evenly all around. I just gently tapped it until it was perfectly even, front and back. I'm going to put this ring on the back side and slowly slide the cap back on. Make sure that both caps are fully seated flat before you start torquing down the bolts. And the lock nut on this is so much larger. Since I'm no longer running the chain tensioner that usually is mounted on this part of the swing arm, I do have a little bit more extra chain than I need. So we're going to start off by removing 2 links, and then we're going to back the rear axle back in. Just going to be using this chain breaker to take out 2 links to get the chain to the right length. Once you get the chain tension and wheel alignment just right, you can now lock down the jam nuts on the adjustment bolts for the axle blocks. You don't need to torque these down too much. It's not really what secures the rear axle. It just keeps the axle blocks from sliding further forward. And we are now down to the last and most important part, the TruMoto Noisy Cricket controller install. And I just realized I forgot to buy one thing. I have no way of mounting this to the frame since I forgot to buy the bracket that's needed. So let's go do that now. Let's go to Electro & Co.'s website and order the Noisy Cricket bracket. I can't believe I forgot to do this. It's only 40 bucks. This mount kit's definitely the easiest way to mount the controller onto any Razor SX or MX. It's just 4 bolts and spacers. And it elevates the controller just enough so there's clearance between the controller and the battery so that the heat the controller generates under pull does not negatively affect the battery. And you know what, while we're at it, I'm also gonna order a 11-tooth sprocket for the one motor, just in case I wanna swap out the gearing later on. I wanna be able to experiment with different gearing combo just to get the right amount of speed and torque combination that I'm looking for. And of course, I'm gonna be using discount code Pat Outdoors 5 just to save a little bit at checkout. Hopefully I get this stuff by next week just so we can do some more testing and clean up the SX a little bit more. I also got a custom graphics kit, so I'm excited for you guys to see what the bike's gonna look like. While we're waiting for the new bracket, let's continue installing the TruMoto Noisy Cricket controller, which Electro & Co. made super easy. Everything's pretty much plug and play. The connector head just plugs into the top of the controller. And then there's 4 plugs that just connect to the components that are already on the bike, starting with the 3 that are mounted on the handlebar, twist throttle, on-off switch, and the voltmeter. And then the 4th connector is just for the hall sensors for the motor. Then there's also this red wire coming from the connector head with a ring terminal. That is actually the signal wire for the on-off switch, which you're just gonna loop in with the positive terminal for the battery right on this side of the controller. And then the last thing is the negative terminal for the battery, which goes on this side. Then there's also the 3 phase wires for the motor. They're labeled GBY. That's right, green wire, blue wire, and yellow wire. I just want to point out something very important. Once you have everything plugged up and the bike turned on, do not twist the throttle quite yet until you at least download the TruMoto app and program the controller and let it know what kind of motor and battery you have so it can run properly. Here's how I have everything currently hooked up. I just use some giant zip ties in between the phase wires and the battery terminals just to hold the Noisy Cricket in place for the meantime, since I don't want this thing jiggling around when we're riding. But here's how everything is tucked. I have majority of the harness just tied to the top right corner of the controller. Battery cables hooked up, phase wires routed through the frame. Let's turn this thing on. Showing 82.8 volts. Before we do any sort of programming, I'm gonna update the firmware on the TruMoto app. Okay, firmware shows updated. Now let's select the vehicle. I'm gonna click Razor. I don't see the battery selection here, so we're gonna input our own. Let's take a look at the Amorge battery specs. So max charge current shows 20 amps. Continuous discharge is 240, 400 amp peak. So let's go input those details. Okay, since we have a 72 volt, let's input 20 cells in a series. We're gonna click the one motor. Since we upgraded the internals, ENC EMX light throttle, and so I'm gonna have the power set to the max that the battery is able to maintain, which is 240 amps continuous, which is 23.5 horsepower, which is gonna be insane for a little Razor like this. I'm gonna keep torque to 300 phase amps for the meantime. Throttle aggression, I'm gonna leave that alone for now. I just wanna take it out for the first time, make sure everything is functioning correctly. Tire diameter in millimeter. I'm gonna select RSF since I currently have RSF wheels installed. Okay, let's click save. My wheels are in the air. Yes, I'm sure my wheels are in the air. Okay, so settings are saved. Let's see what happens. All right, let's go put the plastics back on and see how fast this thing actually is on the road.
You know what, I'm not even gonna turn up the power all the way today. I was gonna crank it up to 400 phase amps at least, but honestly, I kind of just want to get this bike home safely, since I also have a 21-hour flight coming up shortly. Let's do another pull going the other way. Hopefully there's no traffic coming this way. All right, we just did 63 miles an hour, pretty much going slightly uphill. I'm tempted to turn the power up a little bit more. Woo! We hit 66 miles an hour. Easy. And we haven't even turned up the power all the way. Oh man, look at the plastics on my bike. They're just flaring out in the wind. I definitely have to do something about that. I might make some custom brackets whenever we do the graphics install. Man, this thing is stupid fast. It's definitely got the braking power.
All right, guys, well, there it is. We hit 66 miles an hour, which is the same speed as we hit before, but this time we have a lot more usable power on the low end and mid-range, and we haven't even turned up the power all the way yet. I still have my torque set to 300 phase amps, and I'm thinking about putting that up to 400 and slapping on an 11-tooth front sprocket just to see what happens. I feel like we're starting to reach new speed and power goals with the SX500 again. I used to be super excited with my first RZR when I first hit 30 miles an hour, then 40, then 50, and then 60 miles per hour was like mind-blowing to me. But I feel like we're so close to hitting 70 miles an hour that we can't really stop now. So when I get back from my Philippines trip, we're definitely going to continue working on this bike and turning things up. And it's not just the power that I'm happy with. I really like the user friendliness of the TruMoto app, and that I can just make adjustments on the fly, swipe left, swipe right for adjusting throttle sensitivity, power levels, and whatnot. I think the interface is just very easy to use. I'm really happy with the new Extreme brake kit that we have installed here. I think the dual piston calipers front and rear provide plenty of braking power, and the levers are just very sensitive, but at the same time you can modulate it so easily. So I just like the brake feel of it. I'm also thinking about doing some motorsports events with this bike with my buddy Justin. He wants to do 8th mile drag with it. I'm also interested in doing some pit bike racing, so you guys might see more content on that in the near future. If you guys are interested in getting more information on all the parts that we have installed on this project so far, I'll have everything linked in the description below. Thank you, Electro & Co, for helping me out with this project. Make sure you check out their website, which I'll also have linked in the description. You can also use discount code PATOutdoors5 to save a little bit during checkout. If you guys enjoyed today's video, do me a favor and hit that like button. If you like this kind of content, want to keep up with this SX500 project or any of my other projects such as the Tudio, the Talaria, the Roar Mantis, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn your bell notification on. But this is going to be it for today. Thank you for watching.